Allegra, hey, congratulations for your documentary, Salaryman.
Thank you so much.
Now it's being showcased right now at the Doc LA Festival in Los Angeles. How does it feel?
It feels real finally after 5 years of working on this. COVID put a halt to things, and there was a lot of uncertainty. So it was really special to have the interview be seen in a room and to see it myself with other people. I'm very lucky, very thankful for the experience.
5 years is a very long time for any type of project. So how did this all started for you?
Um, I explained it a little bit in the movie, but basically, I was living in New York and I was working in a job, in an office job, which I found personally very unfulfilling, and just life circumstances came about. My visa wasn't renewed, so I had to leave the U.S. And at that moment, I went to Japan because my partner at the time was there, and when I first got there, I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything. I was just blank slate. So I had a camera and I started looking around, and my interest was piqued right away with the salarymen. So I just started photographing salarymen and kind of learning about their life, I suppose. So you could say that it just happened organically, if you will.
Mhm.
Uh, Once I started photographing salarymen and I started learning more about how office workers, work really intensely, that really piqued my interest. And then I encountered this phenomenon of salarymen sleeping in the street, and that furthered my interest. So yeah, I guess it was like any voyage of exploration. Once you focus on a subject and you zoom in, then the world starts opening up.
How long did you stay in Japan during that time?
On and off, I've been in Japan for about a year,
Hmm.
and
Oh,
then much of the process happens backstage. 5 years is a long time, but during that time we were also looking for funding, we were translating things, we were editing. Like our the process of making our movie was not really linear. Like, also when you're doing a documentary, you want things to happen in individuals' lives, so sometimes you just have to allow time to pass.
hmm.
So there was a lot of in between action other than the filming.
Hmm. Uh, was language barrier was that ever a problem with you, or you're very familiar with Japanese?
No, I'm not very familiar at all. I know very few words, and oftentimes the people I was interviewing didn't know English or Spanish, or knew very few words, just like I did. There was a lot we had to get creative. This is my first movie, so I didn't really have money for it. I never went to film school, but I was there, so I was just filming and getting whatever I could. Sometimes we would have to write up our questions in our phones and have them be translated and show the person we were interviewing. And I speak many languages, and since the topic was salarymen and their work environments and whatnot, and with the few words that they sometimes knew in English or that I knew in Japanese, plus little aids like Google Translate, we would, like, get the concept from like this to this to this, and then ultimately, in the translations, we would realize what material we'd gotten. So that was in the most extreme cases. Often we had friends come and translate for us, and when we were lucky, the people we were interviewing actually spoke English. So it was a combination.
Wow. Now, your background originally was a photographer. This is how it all started. It was just photographs. At which point you decided, saying, you know what, this has to be a film.
So It started with photographs, and then when I saw the salarymen sleeping in the street, I I decided to circle them in an outline because I personally thought it was really interesting that nobody saw this phenomenon as connected with overwork and a bigger cultural situation, not even in Japan, but globally, overwork. Um, so that was my first initial reaction, was to kind of almost like create a little shift in the landscape to uh, put people's attention on what I thought I was seeing. But once I took that action, I decided to take a step backward and not draw any conclusions, and rather uh, interview people and document what their experience was, what the salaryman experience was in their own words. I thought it was important not to draw any conclusions, and I thought it was more interesting to research, see what I found. So yeah, it just was really organic.
Were some of those people sleeping on the sidewalks and streets? Were they aware when you put some of their chalk outlines around them? I mean, what happens if they wake up?
They were asleep. They were fully asleep. I mean, on camera, you saw like a couple just woke up and didn't even realize and just walked off.
Yeah. Now, how did you find the interview subjects yourself, and how did you convince them to participate in your documentary?
All kinds of ways, like fathers, cousins, brothers, co-workers of other friends was, an obvious first. Um, but we had to get creative. I mean, I didn't know too many people in Japan, so everything from like dating apps to like walking up to people in the streets to I would go to Shimbashi, which is like the area in Tokyo where there's a lot of salarymen and office workers. So I would go out to the places that they would go, document kind of what was going on there, and get to know people just kind of on the ground, but in the case of it, how shall I say, it was a different case for everybody that we met. For example, I remember that when I first arrived in Tokyo, one of one of the people I found super intriguing was this old man, bald head and like a braided beard with a little pink lace, dressed as Sailor Moon. I saw him in the subway on like my first week in Japan, and I just couldn't believe it. And that guy stayed in my head. And now when I had already been in the process of filming Salaryman for like 3 months, I said, okay, this guy is a super interesting character. I would love to interview him, because in my logic was like, either his dad was a salaryman, his brother is a salaryman, or he's the outsider and all his friends are salarymen, or he himself is a salaryman. So I just started investigating, just like Sailor Moon, Japanese guy, or whatever, just looking for him on Google. And I found him, and I realized that he was like a bit of a local celebrity. And I found him on Twitter, and I just started tweeting him until he agreed to meet me. So that was just kind of one of the ways.
Now, of course, salarymen, Japanese culture is very, very known for for the men, hardworking men, and so on. But you also wanted to put a female perspective into this film. Was that more difficult, and were they more willing to speak about it? Because culturally, they're very much different than the rest of the world.
Yeah, culturally they're very different. I mean, I don't know really. Everybody was different. I wouldn't say that it was a general difference based on gender. Every person that we approached took took the approach in a different way. Some people were not wanting to be interviewed because they didn't have time, or they just were more private individuals. Other people were super interested in sharing their stories. They were happy to have a voice. Yeah, the fact that there were male or female, I don't think as a general rule influenced their willingness to participate. But it was certainly interesting to get to know a sub section of the population which is traditionally, I guess, how am I let me backtrack. I feel like the office in the past, just like in the West, was much more of a male dominated space. So I wanted to give a voice to the women in that platform and to tell their story.
Absolutely. Now, you had a little bit of animation into your documentary. Could you talk about that? Was that because there were some certain things that were hard to film?
I mean, of course, that's always a cinematic avenue, but no, always wanted to implement animation because when I started first focusing on Salarymen, I really saw them as almost like a separate class of individuals within society. So I just kind of almost like put on my Salaryman filter glasses and just saw them, and I wanted to kind of present that in a visual way. And yes, of course, as an avenue for places that we couldn't film. And then also, animation is a big part of culture in Japan, so I wanted to honor that as well.
Wow, great. Now, this is being your first time directing. How was that experience for you?
Eh, I very naively didn't know that making a movie was so challenging. I feel like I went like making this movie was also like kind of going to film school and business school and an introduction into a law degree. It's really interesting. It's very humbling.
Does this give you the urge to do it again?
It really depends on the day you ask me. If it's on a day I've been talking to lawyers, my answer is hell no. If it's on a day I meet somebody really interesting, I'm already thinking like, oh my God, I want to interview this person. I want to get them on camera, for my next movie. And then I'll be like, oh no, my next movie. I don't know if I should ever do that again. But no, I mean, realistically, yeah, it's a great opportunity for meeting really special people and having wonderful experiences. So yeah, I definitely want to continue making movies.
Great. And now, one more thing about your documentary. You added a post-COVID, in interviews in there. So I'm assuming the movie was done, before the pandemic. But why did you want to go back and revisit them again?
Well, actually, the movie was not done. We were filming, I mean, sorry, editing, and we had maybe like a month or so to go um, till the edit was wrapped. And then COVID happened. So everything was a little bit up in the air, including funding, including what we were going to do. I was always editing next to my editor, and the idea of an editor working by himself and me in Costa Rica, my editor was in New York, was a little bit unheard of. Like there weren't really platforms for this kind of work to take place. So we just paused it for a little bit, and COVID really affected work and the way we think about work. So there was no way not to include that. There was also the question of, did we capture an end of an era? Like, are things actually going to change? Is the change permanent? Is it temporary? So, I mean, it almost was not even a question. It just felt super, super important, super relevant to do it. So when funding became a little bit more clear, and when both myself and my editor became a little bit more comfortable with editing at a distance, we just kind of wrapped the film like that, COVID style, on Zoom.
That's true, just like what we're doing right now.
Exactly.
Well, Allegra, let me wrap this up with one last question with you. As audiences get to check out your documentary, Salaryman, what is the one most important take or lesson that you hope that they would walk away with after watching your film?
I would hope that it was the same as what it was for me, meaning, for a lot of us, life kind of just happens. We're in high school, and all of a sudden we have to get a job, we have to provide for ourselves or take care of our families, and then we're just in this conveyor belt, and off we go, right? And very often we don't have the privilege to even think about a bigger purpose in life, or what it is that we want to do, or what it is that we don't want to do, and what we don't want to give up on. And at the moment when I lost my visa, after working in New York, I felt like my life had collapsed in a way. But it was actually an opportunity for me to revisit what I didn't want to do in my life, who I didn't want to become. Personally, I didn't want to work in a cubicle and spend my days in front of a computer. I was fortunate enough to figure out a way personally to not do that. And one of those ways was making this movie. However, in order to make this movie, I had to do a lot of things to gain funding, like selling paintings. Like, I had to be very creative. But I guess the long story short, the short answer to that question is, I would like for people to take a beat and analyze where they draw the line. What is important for them, and what they don't want to give up on, with their jobs or with their lives. And I think COVID in general was an opportunity for introspection on that level for most of us. So
That is a terrific answer. Well, thank you, Allegra, for speaking to us about Salaryman. It's sure is going to be an eye opener, for a lot of people if they watch this documentary, questioning their own lives. As a lot of workers here in America, in the United States, have already disappeared, questioning after what happened after the pandemic. That's for certain.
yeah, I mean, at the very least, consider the mental health aspects of these very intense work environments, I would say.
That is true. That is true. Well, hey, Allegra, thank you very much. And you know what? When you do your next documentary, I'm gonna watch that one too. So,
Thank you so much for taking the time.
hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.